Agree with what he said 9 years ago, but it's not 8-9 years ago now.
At the time he was failing to apologise, he was refusing to apologise, and then he later did.
I mean, cancel culture, as I think I mentioned earlier, cancel culture used to be referred to as call-out culture. So for me, I think these are only comparable by these three people have said things and those three people have done things.
Hello and welcome to Trade Off, a show where we attempt to get those from both sides of an argument to reach a middle ground. I'm Mara Okpedal and today's topic is cancel culture. Towards my right we have those who are for cancel culture, we have Mara and Nathan, and towards my left we have those who are against cancel culture, we have Kate and James. Now, cancel culture describes a form of boycott in which somebody, usually a celebrity, who has shared a questionable or unpopular opinion or has had behaviour in the past that is perceived to be either offensive, has been called out on social media or cancelled. We'll now move on to the first example. So, in 2019, popular African-American comedian Kevin Hart was booted from hosting the Oscars after old anti-LGBTQ tweets were resurfaced from 10 years ago. The tweets read, "Yo, if my son comes home and tries to play with my daughter's dollhouse, I'm going to break it over his head and say in my voice, stop, that's gay. Okay, I'm now waking up and I'm in a good mood, so I think I'm going to go to the gym and get a big no homo lol. Laughing my ass off at all the women asking me where their pic is. I'm not passing along a pic of a naked man. That will make me gay by association." So the resurfacing of these tweets led to backlash in which Kevin Hart took to Twitter to apologise. And in his apology, he wrote, "I have made the choice to step down from hosting this year's Oscars. This is because I do not want to be a distraction on a night that should be celebrated by so many amazing, talented artists. I sincerely apologise to the LGBTQ community for my insensitive words from my past. I'm sorry that I hurt people. I'm evolving and want to continue to do so. My goal is to bring people together, not tear us apart. Much love and appreciation to the Academy. I hope we can meet again." Now, my first question for those against cancel culture is, have you heard of this before and what do you feel regarding this occurrence?
Well, I heard about it as it was kind of happening, and I was a bit shook. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, oh, okay. I don't really like Kevin Hart as a comedian anyway, but ultimately, at his core, this was 9 years ago, 8 years after the fact that he'd done it. People mature, and I think that it's fine to call people out, but if you're going to call someone out 8 or 9 years, or even 10 years after the fact, yeah, that's fine. And he's now apologised for it, and he stepped down from the Oscars, which is a very prestigious thing to do. Yeah. Has he not been punished enough? Because very recently he has been more supportive of the LGBT community, but since before all of this being called out and things like that. So for me, I think it's people mature. I suppose that's what it is. People get old. And he is a comedian. 10 years ago, jokes like that were a lot more normalised, whereas now they're just not.
Okay, so you think the changing of times changes how people perceive the jokes, basically?
Yeah, so comedy is, you could consider it as a social barometer. So if you go back in any point of time, you pick any point of time, you can find out what kind of jokes people would make and what people would say. And they are very, very different on a decadely basis, you could say. So the jokes that were made 10 years ago, they were very normalised, because you can even just look at films at that time, where comedy films would make those jokes and things like that. So, but do we hold films like that to account? Do we do that? You can't, because you have to hold the people to account. I don't agree with what he said 9 years ago, but it's not 8-9 years ago now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, thank you. So we're going to move on to those for cancel culture. What do you have to say in relation to that?
I think ultimately the effects of his cancellation were that he did step down from the Oscars. At the time he was failing to apologise, he was refusing to apologise, and then he later did. And the Oscars have a very big customer base, a very big audience, and that's full of a very diverse amount of people. And as a capitalist sort of organisation, the Oscars wouldn't want to risk any member of their audience being offended by the production. So it only makes sense that he wouldn't do that, as these tweets were called into question at the time.
Okay. So after saying that, do you think that cancel culture is effectively bullying or mob mentality?
I don't think so. These aren't random people who have no platform. They're incredibly rich people and people who already have a platform. And we're just criticising that platform and saying, do you still hold these opinions? And ultimately, when people say yes or no, it responds in time.
All right. So in a similar situation, in 2019, comedian Shane Gillis, who was set up to join Saturday Night Live showcast, was fired due to a previous comedy resurfacing in which he had used racial slurs. So in the video, he said, "Chinatown's nuts. Let the live there." Now, this obviously led to backlash, which obviously had him kicked off the show. Now, in his apology, he wrote, "I'm a comedian who pushes boundaries. I sometimes miss. If you go through my 10 years of comedy, most of it is bad. You're going to find a lot of bad misses. I'm happy to apologize to anyone who's actually offended by anything I've said. My intention is never to hurt anyone, but I'm trying to be the best comedian I can, and sometimes that requires risks." So, in relation to this, on this side, do you think that cancel culture could potentially be ruining comedy?
I'd say definitely. I think a lot of, so say if you went onto social media and say if there's an article on Facebook, if you do actually take a look at the comments, a lot of people speak about snowflakes and how people can't take comedy. I don't agree with what he said. I think it is very disrespectful.
I don't think there is a joke in that. Like,
Yeah,
like as somebody who considers myself a bit of a comedian, it's like, where is the joke? Do you know what I mean? It's just a statement, and you can misread that statement.
definitely.
I
And I
think,
think obviously social media as well, you can take so many things from social media in a different format or way. So some people who are a bit dark may find that funny, but other people may find it just completely, I'm not sure how to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, we to hear what the opposing side has to say about that.
Yeah, just on following on what you said, you're against what the effects cancel culture could have on people. So, like in, for example, comedians, they have this platform, and because it's comedy, I think people they use it as a bit of an excuse because it is comedy, it is a laughter, but we're laughing at someone else's expense. So I feel like comedy does have a really big impact on the effect it has on people. That's why I feel cancel culture, especially in this circumstances, should definitely be invoked, because why should he be allowed to say that and give such a stupid apology in a sense just because he's a comedian? Should comedians be allowed to say that just because it's comedy, you know?
I agree with what you're saying. As I said earlier, there is no joke in what he says.
Yeah.
You can't even break it down to find the joke. It's just him saying what he's saying. And it can come across more as an opinion than a joke. I feel people should be held to account, especially by the people. For the first time ever, it feels like the general public have a sense of power over celebrities and higher figures. It's about knowing where do we drop the line? When does it become an issue for professionals rather than us? Because as you say, when a group of people rally up against one person, that can affect someone badly, and then we don't know the effects of that, and we certainly don't know what people are going through.
I think people are very quick to jump on a subject that they're not necessarily involved in. So like obviously on social media, a lot of people like to be out for an argument, they like conflict, they enjoy arguing with people, and I feel like it comes to a certain point where that is too much for someone to handle. Obviously, like the current example, Caroline Flack, she was quite a troubled character. She did have quite a lot going on in her life, and I feel like people were too quick to comment on the situation, and it's a bit cringy, but we don't know what's going on in other people's lives, and I feel like even though what he said was completely out of order, there is a reasoning for it, and I do agree, like definitely, like there is a reasoning.
Thank you. Now moving on to the next example. In 2018, female American rapper Doja Cat allegedly used the homophobic slur when relating to American rapper Tyler, the Creator, and Al Sweatshirt. Now this was the tweet, and that received a lot of backlash from people online, and she then took to Twitter to defend herself, saying, "I called a couple people when I was in high school in 2015. Does this mean I don't deserve support? I've said roughly 15,000 times in my life. Does same mean you hate gay people? Do I hate gay people? I don't think I hate gay people. Gay is okay. Now, my first question for this side is, what do you think about people in society holding people accountable for actions done or things said in the past?
I think it's right to hold people to account. Cancellation in its purest form isn't really something that takes place very often, and especially in Doja Cat's example, she's still selling out tours, she's still releasing albums, her life's gone on unchanged. It's important to make sure that people who have a platform are using it responsibly, and when we check that person, when we spend time looking at that person's message, we might find something erroneous in the past, and we might want to go back and say, do you still hold this opinion? And in Doja Cat's example, she apologised, and her life has gone on unchanged because she's shown that she no longer holds that opinion.
So that's quite interesting. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I do agree that we should definitely hold people accountable, and this idea of cancel culture, maybe taking it, not taking it to that extent of cancelling people, but making sure people are held accountable for their actions. Because I do feel like maybe if no one had pointed out or no one had given her the backlash that she had received, maybe she wouldn't have apologized. Because looking at her apology, I don't feel like she honestly knows what she did wrong. She's in a sense apologizing because people are saying she did something wrong, not that she thinks there's anything wrong with the word at all. I don't think she feels that way, and I feel like without people saying, oh, you shouldn't have said that, you shouldn't have said that, she wouldn't say anything. She would go on thinking saying is fine and offending people. So I feel like really holding people accountable is necessary in a sense.
Okay, and this side, what do you have to say about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I fully believe, again, in holding people to account and trying to understand, is this your genuine viewpoint? Because if it is, it affects people. I think, like, in this case, yeah, I do read this and I think she doesn't have a clue what the meaning of that word is. Not in a bad way, she's maybe grown up and she's heard it and she's heard it so often. And the best example I can use for that is the black community took back the N-word. So, it's very unprecedented that anyone should ever say that outside of that community. It's used in rap often, it's used in everything. But I think when you look at the word like and stuff like that, I would never take that back into the context of English, but I would try and rip the meaning away from it. Because to me, words are only as powerful as you allow them to be. And when we stop caring about what these words in the past, they've caused a lot of pain, they've caused a lot of heartbreak to a lot of people's lives. I don't necessarily take it back and then make it a staple of this is what we are all the time. But I think with like words that are solely derogatory and like that, the best thing you can do is you either take ownership, like the black community did with the N-word, or the alternative is you see this word that has these negative connotations and you try your hardest as a group of people who are offended by it to rip the meaning away from it. Because as soon as you rip that meaning away and it means nothing to you, it can't hurt you. That's how I feel. I grew up having that and being called that and being called loads of other things. And it was only when I started to go, actually, these are just words. They genuinely do not mean anything to me. I laugh at people now when they'll call me things like that because it's just funny. Like, these words are just, how were they made? Do you know what I mean? And if you didn't know, the word is actually a bunch of sticks. That's what it means.
A bunch of sticks.
You were saying that you could almost take the power out of the word and not take it personally. But if it has such historical background, how?
But that is it. It's like not everyone can, and I understand that. I feel very lucky to have liberated myself from the meaning of the word. So if someone calls me, I'll get offended, but who? Because I know that they're trying to offend me.
Yeah.
So I don't allow myself to get offended. I just laugh at them. I'm like, if call me whatever you want, but at least be original about it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's
I feel like that's with everything though, because obviously, like, I'm a larger woman. Like, the word fat, like, I have had that quite a lot in my childhood, and obviously, like, bullying. That doesn't really mean anything to me no more. Like, I kind of embrace it in a way.
Yeah, you numb yourself.
Exactly.
To it
like, and I think that is a society we live in. To be honest with you.
And well, to some degree, I don't think that society. I think we put I think a lot of society does put too much emphasis on words.
Definitely.
You know, and what words mean. And again, and it doesn't work for everyone. Not everyone can, but for me personally, what worked for me was going, this word has a historical, horrifying meaning, but if I stop letting it hurt me, hopefully people will stop saying it. And I will always encourage people not to say it. I'll always do this and that. But again, if you take it into the comparison with the Christmas song as well, that it's used in Fairy Tale New York, that is something that was made at a different time. It was made to me, it was made in a different time when things meant different things. You know, and when do you get to the point when you take away the artist's intention from the art? Like, should we just not listen to that song anymore? Do you know what I mean? It's very much like that, and I think that art is a space where people can say things, and nowadays it's gotten so much better because people are more considerate about what other people are feeling. But you know, I don't think you can really hold that against things that happened maybe 20 years ago. Do you know what I mean?
So thank you for that. So moving on to the next example. This is US comedian Kathy Griffin, and in 2017, she was ditched by US broadcaster CNN due to posing in this image with a fake decapitated head of President Donald Trump. Now, in the post, she captioned it, "I captioned this, there was blood coming out of his eyes, blood coming out of his wherever. Also, at Tyler Shields, great photography filmmaker." Now, my first question for this side is, have you heard about this before, and what do you think about this?
I did see it when it was happening because Twitter likes to make it known when kind of online riots are happening. And a lot of people were really offended by it because a lot of people in America absolutely adore and idolise Donald Trump. It's almost kind of worshipping in a sense. Like they just love what he stands for. And a lot of people just don't. And I think that's the issue. It's like we over here, we see the American system as just being so flawed and so out there. How could they ever let someone like this get in? But then you find it over there, they're laughing at us for the exact same reason. So we're kind of laughing at each other for similar reasons. But again, it's just one comedian's opinion, and she doesn't like Donald Trump. It's not a newfound belief to dislike Donald Trump. CNN, Central News Network, I believe, they're abbreviated for, are part of the news organisations which I believe Donald Trump referred to as being fake news. So to me, that seems like they're almost saying, we don't want to be referred to as that. Like, you're a bad image for us to this man.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Also as well, like obviously Donald Trump, he's got some quite colourful opinions.
Yeah.
And it's okay for him to completely almost brainwash the people of America with his opinions, but as soon as someone else steps up and talks about their opinions, they're almost cancelled, even though Donald Trump has been allowed to say some very disrespectful and unrealistic things, which a lot of people won't agree with. So I think it's just as bad as Donald Trump, to be completely honest with you.
It depends on the context of this piece as well, because I think when you remove the context from this piece, it's the decapitated head of a president covered in blood. But when you look at the context of Donald Trump and his presidential campaign, he's utilised hate to gain his way into absolute power, and criticism of that is fair game, in my opinion.
It's quite interesting that you guys said that the president's kind of untouched for being cancelled. So moving on to the next one, which kind of ties in with that. So we've spoken about celebrities now, and now here's someone who's not in the public eye. So this is Andy Moritz, and she's a freshman at a women's liberal arts school. Well, she was in 2016, and she was cancelled after posting a message on her college rides share group chat on Facebook. And in her message, she wrote, "Do you have nothing to do this Saturday? Would you like to spend your Saturday helping a fellow mortal not get killed? Perhaps you wouldn't mind campaigning for Trump. I'm headed into Springfield on Saturday to do just that. But I'm carpooling with a guy I don't know. For obvious reasons, I don't want to go alone. So would anyone be willing to go with me?" Now, this led to dozens of students, most of them who she doesn't even know, attacking her due to her political views. And she was bullied and was forced out of school 2 days later. And she also thought about committing suicide. So my question, which is open to both sides, is should the practice of cancel culture be applied to people who are not in the public eye?
It would. I think cancel culture in itself is a very online phenomenon. It's directed at people with a platform, and in this lady's case, she doesn't really have a platform. I think this is a degree of localized public shaming, and I wouldn't advocate for vigilantism in that way, in any way, regardless.
Okay.
I think it's a very interesting thing because, I mean, cancel culture, as I think I mentioned earlier, cancel culture used to be referred to as call-out culture. So you would call someone out. We've all done it. We'll call a friend out if we don't like what they're saying or whatever. That seems very innocent to say, I don't agree with you and what you're saying. And where down the line was it changed to cancel culture? Because cancel is a very negative buzzword. It's a very negative buzzword. And call out implies discussion. Cancelled means flat out no. Like, do you know what I mean? That's what that feels to me. I don't know what point it changed that title. And I think that happened online specifically. But I've seen it happen to so many people. And in this sense, specifically, this to me is what I would consider to be bullying. And that's probably my main reason why cancel culture is really not something that I would advocate. I advocate holding people to account and calling them out and asking them. But cancelling, I think it became called cancelling when someone literally just was removed from the public eye, like shamed to that degree. And that to me is very interesting when you see it as someone who isn't in a position of wealth, isn't in a position of power, has no social higher standing. So when you see it happen to people on the kind of ground level, no one's there to defend them. You know, celebrities will always have people that will fight their case. You know what I mean? So even when you're having all this bad stuff, you're having some people say good things. It can be kind of, you take the rough with the smooth sort of thing. But when it's people who don't have that, that's when I think it gets into bullying territory, and I think that it's an unfair. I think it can get really unfair, and she should never have really been kicked out of school for that.
Yeah, especially as she's got a future ahead of her, and she's got especially as she's got a future ahead of her, and she still is a child. I do feel like the statement she said could have been a bit less. Like she didn't have to express what she wanted to. I feel like if she did it that way, she wouldn't have got that much hate, but it still doesn't justify how, because she can consider committing suicide. I mean, that is not what a normal young person would think about doing.
But people can't learn if you don't educate them.
Yeah, it's interesting how both sides said that this instance was bullying. So the question I have to ask, so is it different for celebrities then? So what do you think about the statement that celebrities should, they shouldn't also be, what's the question I'm trying to ask? So do you know how you said how she might be going through things as well? So what do you think about the statement that potentially celebrities should be treated as the same as normal people as well, because they're also going through things?
I feel like they have so obviously if you're a celebrity, you have management and you advise what to say and what not to say. So it's different for celebrities? Not necessarily. I do think it's the same. Like obviously there's a certain point. I think it's more out of emotion. You wouldn't really go to Twitter and write an emotional response or an opinion without a meaning, like as we spoke about earlier. It doesn't stem from nowhere. It does come from somewhere. But yeah, I think that's just, yeah.
I do think celebrities is really different, because I feel like as the young girl, she doesn't have a platform. She doesn't have millions and millions of people looking at everything that she posts on social media. But however, celebrities, they are well aware. They have a big fan base. They have a platform where many people are influenced by the things they say, by their beliefs. Like there's some celebrities, just because they follow Trump, their fans will follow Trump. They have such a big influence, and I feel like because they are well aware of this, they should be held accountable more than a normal person from school who doesn't have a fan base, doesn't have people following them, doesn't have, this big influence on the world. So I do think it is very different.
Okay, thank you guys. So moving on to the next bit. Now, on the left, as the examples we did before, there is Doja Cat, there's Kevin Hart, and there's Shane Gillis. And on the right, there is Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, and R. Kelly, which are celebrities who have been convicted of sexual crimes. So my question is, which is open to both sides, is do you feel like there's a difference? They've both been cancelled, but do you think that there's a difference between the two?
Well, I think one side is I think there's a difference between spoken words and physical acts. You know,
Okay.
I can say I'm gonna hit someone, but unless I actually hit them, do you know what I mean? So I think there is a difference. I think language is an interesting thing because language is what brings people together and builds walls between people. Sometimes when you can't really understand what a certain group of people are saying or whatever, but I think language is ultimately how we communicate, but how we address ourselves. Everyone speaks in a different way. Everyone articulates themselves in a certain way. Whereas physical acts like rape, murder, all of that is an act physically against someone, and it removes power from those people. And it can degrade people, like these three men here. It can strongly affect people's mental health. It can lead to loads of horrible situations. So for me, I think these are only comparable by these three people have said things and those three people have done things. And I think obviously doing things is worse than saying something. Because again, as you say, context is important. And with those three men, we know the full context. They were three men who were very, very famous. They thought they could get away with everything, anything, and they got caught out. Whereas these are three people who effectively are comedians. Doja Cat, to me, how Doja Cat presents herself in her music is quite comical. So if you take these three comedians, well, that one to the far right isn't very funny, but if you take it like that, maybe there is a strong difference. Do you know what I mean?
I remember you saying earlier though that people, even both sides, that people can change. So is it different for those on the right? Do you not think that they can change as well? They should still be held accountable for what they did.
They absolutely should be held accountable because, again, I think physical acts of violence in any format, again, whether that be assault, murder, rape, and rape being, I think, the worst one because people have to live with that. I think physical acts are not as forgivable. It's not like Harvey Weinstein consented to sleeping with someone and then, conveniently didn't hear her say stop. Do you know what I mean? He knew what he was doing, as did everyone. And again, celebrity culture is a really interesting one because it's so, it's all about money, drugs, sex, all of that stuff. That's what LA and Hollywood are built on, effectively nowadays. Someone would say that. Whereas, and I don't feel like any of these three men, I've ever heard them build up to it. Do you know what I mean? Whereas self-made
share
people.
remorse, you mean?
No. So I think Harvey Weinstein was sort of born into it, wealth and stuff like that.
Okay.
Again, you have to take class into consideration because do you come from a class that thinks you're above other people? Do you know what I mean? Whereas I don't think Doja Cat, Kevin Hart, and whoever that guy is, do you think they're higher above anyone, really? Obviously, they know they've got a higher status,
Yeah.
but I don't think they feel like they're genuinely above anyone. But that's a personal thing. Whereas the three guys on the left, they condoned physical acts of violence that affected people probably even till today.
Okay, that's
I
interesting.
think opinions can change, and the people on the right all held opinions that were scrutinised, and then they showed that they changed their opinions.
Okay.
On the left is past actions, and past actions are in the past. They're things that we've done and affected people, and they can't be changed. That's already gone.
You can change the person after that, I think, but it doesn't take away what you did, and you can't apologise for they can't apologise for the things they did. Nothing they can do can apologise for that. Whereas, as I say, language is very common today, and people have opinions and they will say things whether you agree with them or not. And again, we live in a world where people can say what they want. They're allowed to say what they want. It's their democratic right to do so. So you can hold people account to what they say, absolutely. But when it comes to physical atrocities. That's just not. It's just not acceptable.
Yeah, it's interesting what both of you said. So, in relation to what you both said, my question is: so, is there a way back from cancel culture?
In what sense is there a way back?
In both senses, to be honest.
I feel with the physical part, with the people on the left, because it's such a, like you said, stuff like rape is something that stays with people. It's not something you can apologize for and say, okay, I'm sorry, I take it back. And like you said as well, it's not on the right side is opinion based. People's opinion, I do believe people's opinions can change, but people as human beings, I don't personally feel that they change. But your opinions can change, but on the left side, it's not an opinion, it's what they did, and that can't change. You can't change what you did. You can't take that
I
back.
feel like there's a line, and then once you've crossed that line, I think you can't really go further than
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I think I get. Yeah, as you say, you cross that line, and then how can anyone like emulate with you? How can
Yeah.
anyone look at you and see you as a great person or whatever? Because what you've done is so horrible. Like, again, and as I say, opinion-based stuff is interesting because everyone has an opinion. Everyone's allowed an opinion. And as you say, people do look at what they've said and they will apologise. Some people won't, but we've seen people who do. And again, and some people just don't get it. Do you know what I mean? And it's our job to educate people on opinion. You know, so to me, like my kind of thing is like, I don't always need to understand it. I just have to tolerate it if it's the way someone's living their life, based on how they're living their life. So if there's something someone's doing, like maybe they do a specific job I've never heard of, and I'm like, I could not understand that. I don't have to understand it because it's not my job. Like, do you know what I mean? Just have to be like, good on you, power to you. Just tolerate. Because the one thing we don't tolerate is being hateful and spiteful, and I don't think many people go out their way to be hateful and spiteful.
Okay.
When we look at cancel culture and we say, is there a way back?
Yeah.
We should look back at what cancel culture has done. And altogether, cancel culture really hasn't affected many people's careers. Everyone is sort of continuing as they were. They've had slight bumps. People like Doja Cat have continued, Kevin Hart selling out tours. All these people have faced minor scrutiny and they've felt some consequences for it, but then they've continued. And I think it's important that we recognise that cancel culture has sort of generated an increased sense of responsibility for celebrities with big platforms, that they should be more vigilant with what they're posting and what kind of message they're sending out.
Yeah, I feel like cancel culture it's not really as aggressive as it sounds. Cancel culture, no one ever, I can't think of an example of anyone that's really been cancelled from anything that they've said, but I feel like it does definitely make people take more responsibility and be aware of what they're putting out there, because as you said, we can try and educate people, but on the social media basis, I don't think people are really there to educate people, but to comment on what people are saying, to have an opinion on what people are saying, not exactly educate. So I feel like if they're aware of that, they would be more cautious of what they put on social media.
Yeah, of course. I do get that. I think we should absolutely just separate the two. I think you should separate call-out culture with cancel culture, because I think cancel culture and call-out culture is very different. I've seen musicians that aren't quite in the upper echelons of like the public eye who have been cancelled. They don't make music anymore. They don't do creative things anymore, as much as people would like them to. Because there was allegations of sexual assault, things like that, which that said person ended up coming out and trying to provide evidence against to fight their case. People didn't care about the evidence he was providing, apart from his die-hard fans that cared. And that has an effect on people. But again, it's that person's word against another person's word against another person's word, and we don't really know. Again, it comes down to not knowing the full story. And I think calling people out, holding them to account, asking them, why do you believe this? Do you believe this? What's happening? Apologise, all of that. That's all great, because we have a right to do that as human beings and as a society that lives together. But it's the cancelling part, because it feels like it comes from a lot of... I feel like a lot of people online necessarily will go for people who aren't woke. I don't mean that badly. I think people who are open-minded to everything is fantastic, but it does come from this sense of like, when it comes to things like, oh, I don't understand X, Y, and Z, a lot of the time the first thing I see is, you're ignorant. I don't think ignorance is a bad thing, because ignorance can be moulded and made into something. You can make people less ignorant. Do you know what I mean? And that comes through a care and a love and understanding, to have the patience. I think Courtney Acton at Best on Big Brother, who was the drag queen who was on Big Brother, and she was asked, how do you do this? Like, all of this, blah, blah, blah. And she explained how she viewed her own sexuality, her sexual orientation. And that spoke to a lot of people. Again, it was using that platform to educate people. And you're right, people listen to celebrities. People listen to what they're doing. They want to kind of be the best version that a celebrity would like to meet or whatever. But ultimately what it comes from is like, you're not, just be yourself. Just be yourself, love yourself, because in loving yourself, you'll love other people. I think a lot of it stems from just a lot of hate that goes on and a lot of fear in the world, whereas we don't need that right now because there's too much of it already. So again, it comes from a place of understanding, knowing what the full situation is, and noticing, are you becoming part of a mob, I think? Are you becoming part of a group of people that is just saying the same thing over and over and over again until the message gets across? And I think that is why I don't necessarily agree with it. But again, fully support calling people out, holding them to account, but not necessarily the going for the juggler approach, which doesn't happen as often as you say, but we still see it.
If the end result of cancel culture is that celebrities are more vigilant with what they post, and that minority groups and just generally people who don't have much of a platform are better able to scrutinise and find out what message and what views a person holds, I think it's important we keep doing that, because it leads to a better discourse.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys, and thank you so much, guys, for watching. This has been Trade Off, and have a great night.